I'm here with Marilyn McEntyre. Marilyn is a writer and professor at UC Berkeley. Her writing has appeared in the Christian Century, Weavings, Sojourners, Christianity Today, and several other publications. And her most recent book is A Faithful Farewell. Thank you, Marilyn, for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here.
As you know, Frederick Buechner will soon be turning 90 years old. Is there anything you'd like to wish him for this great milestone?
I wish him full and happy satisfaction in an enormously fruitful life that's been a blessing to me and so many other people. I hope he receives gratitude from all quarters.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm sure Mr. Buechner will greatly appreciate hearing from you. Next, can you tell me how you first learned about his work?
Well, I think the simplest way to put it is word of mouth, but I know that in recent years, maybe within the past decade, his name kept coming up in circles, church circles, as I began to give retreats. For instance, I would run into someone at almost every retreat who was a fan. And I certainly knew his name, and I think that I had read pieces of various things along the way, but I never really got into reading his books until maybe the last 10 or 12 years. And then I just sat down and read several in a row and understood what the fan club was about.
What would you say attracts you most to his writing?
I love the time he spends on description, the way he lingers over the details of a person's tone of voice or the way someone moves or looks. You feel as though you are in the presence of a mind and an imagination that is willing to take the time to give due regard to what he's seeing. And I think that cultivates in the reader a habit of slowing down and noticing. I love that, and I also love his gift for simile and analogy. I remember one that I mentioned in a talk I gave, a passage where he describes a character who has a speech impediment, and he says his tongue was like a crab trying to get out of a trap. And I just thought that was a remarkable image that gave me pause and made me think about the sense of entrapment that must go with speech impediments. He does that over and over. He just makes you notice people in terms of what they're coping with.
How would you say that Mr. Buechner's writing has influenced your own career?
Well, I think any good writer that you come to appreciate becomes a model if you are also a writer. And so those two features of his writing, for instance, I feel are things that he's taught me or encouraged or helped me to cultivate because they become points of reference. The other thing is that he has done quite a bit in terms of telling biblical stories or appropriating biblical material in new ways. And I think he models for me and for people in the church now something that's really important, which is the notion that you can enter into Scripture and all of its gaps and all of the mysteries of Hebrew and Greek, even if you're only reading it in English. All the things that are left out leave space for the imagination, and he's really bold about claiming that space and retelling the story. So he retells the Jacob story in terms in which I doubt most of us have ever heard it. And having grown up in an evangelical home where the Bible was a central point of reference, it's liberating to come to writers who receive it with such a spacious and exuberant kind of freedom.
That's great. Thank you, Marilyn. Which of Mr. Buechner's books would you say has meant the most to you?
Well, I loved Open Heart. I loved so much about Open Heart, beginning with the title. And that's one of the ones I remember, particularly in terms of style.
More broadly speaking, what influence would you say that Mr. Buechner has had on Christianity and the world at large?
I think that he has opened up contemporary conversation. He's wonderful about reaching back into antiquity, not only to scripture, but also to the chivalric tradition. He uses, in some of his work, he uses kind of antique language, and so he connects readers to Christian history. But he writes about contemporary moments and contemporary events in a way that embodies what it means to witness the world with eyes of faith and to bring that to language. So I think that he has helped to revitalize the soil of conversation among people of faith by providing words. I've often quoted Kenneth Burke saying, literature is equipment for living. And I think that he does equip his readers the way pastors are charged to equip the saints. He equips us with images and phrases that stay with you and come up in conversation. I think it's the task of any good writer to help do that, to pollinate the conversation, so to speak. He's done that in a big way for lots of people.
That's great. I realize that this next question is difficult, but if you were to sum up Fred in a few words, what would you say?
Wow. I would say gentle and challenging and faithful and imaginative. And I would use those 4 words to kind of modify each other. That his gentleness is always comes in the context of something that's challenging, and his fidelity is expressed in his imagination.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. That's very insightful. Is there anything else that you wanted to pass along before we finish?
I think of the blessing of a long life, and not everybody gets that. Some people whose lives are long are not so fruitful in the later years, and so I just want to rejoice with him in the blessing of a long life and tell him that it's a blessing to me too, and a lot of people out here.